on the 17th of September, which is almost 81 years to the hour. This sky was filled with about 6,800 paratroopers. 20 from the 101st Airborne. 502nd was jumping at the north end, and by the way, that's north, south, and the appropriate east and west. That was a drop zone B. 502nd drops at the north end of the drop zone. This area right here is drop zone C. This is where the 506th is going to jump. 135 aircraft coming in. Of the 135, only 4 were lost in the 101st. 2 of them crashed here on the DZ, and 2 other aircraft crashed elsewhere. A huge difference from Normandy. And as you saw in the film, the reason that they jumped during the day was that they needed to be, speed was key, and seizing these bridges was key. So you had to be not only as close to the objective as possible, but have everyone together as quickly as possible. And that's you can only do that with a large field and during daylight. A lot of the guys talked about it being their easiest jump ever. It was a nice soft field. There's kind of a myth that's gone around saying that the Dutch underground knew it was going to happen, so they freshly plowed the field. And no, some of the Dutch underground in the Netherlands as a whole knew something big was coming, but they didn't know any details. And the Dutch underground in this area, in the Eindhoven, Nijmegen area, were very busy and very active. So in France, where during the war, the people who were actually in the French resistance was a tiny, tiny number. Most of them were anarchists and communists because they were actually organized into operational cells before the war, so they were the ones who were in a position to resist the German occupation. Now, after the war, everybody was in the French resistance, and they'd be more than happy to tell you that. However, in the Netherlands, absolute opposite. The Dutch resistance was active all throughout the war, and very well organized. So some of the leaders knew something was coming, but they were not given any specifics. So 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 506 drops here. A little later in the afternoon, gliders are going to be coming in on the west side of the drop zone, but that's called landing zone W. As you can see from the size of the field, and if you've seen the maneuverability and precision of gliders, they're using the whole field. And there's some aerial photos that, you know, they're not all nicely collected down there. They're all over the place. Now, one thing, some differences between what the 82nd Airborne did and what the 101st Airborne did. The 82nd Airborne, it's up to the north and it's more isolated. So for the gliders, Jim Gavin, the 82nd Airborne Division commander, decided to load more of his gliders with artillery and anti-tank guns and things like that, because he knew, one, that there was a German armor presence up there, and he knew he was going to have to support himself for a couple of days. Whereas Max Taylor, here with the 101st, was expecting to link up right away with all the British, so they figured they were going to have artillery and tank support from the Brits right away. So what Taylor did is he loaded up his gliders with jeeps for mobility, reconnaissance troops, and a lot of signalmen. So he wanted to be able to see and communicate as quickly as possible. Once the guys land here, they're gonna, the different battalions have different rally points, 1st Battalion, 2nd Battalion, and the headquarters. And all 3 battalions, once they've gotten together, their goal is to march south towards the town of Son. At Son is the Wilhelmina Canal. It's an east-west canal, and there are 3 bridges over the canal. 1 main road bridge and then 2 smaller bridges, each about 1 kilometer on either side. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when we actually go down to Son and see the site of the original bridge. The new bridge is much nicer and bigger, and the old one was blown up. And so the first serial of aircraft to come in came in pretty clean. The Germans were really taken by surprise. But the last few aircraft at the tail end of the 506 got a lot of fire. And most of that was like the regimental headquarters. So even Colonel Sink's plane lost an engine while it was coming in. It got shot up. The aircraft was able to get away. In fact, someone said, you know, Sink's looks out, sees the engine go, and kind of says to no one in particular, just like, huh, there goes the engine. And then they all went out the door.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
They launched from where?
Well, Greenham Common.
Okay.
That's where the 506 took off, where we were, you know, a few days ago. Mm-hmm. And they actually took a southern route into here. It was more direct than the 82nd and the British Airborne. So as they all move in and move south, which we'll talk about a little bit later, what I want to shift to is how important this place was to the veterans, because most of them had a good jump. They really developed a bond with the Dutch, unlike the French. Right away, active assistance by the Dutch resistance, but when we go back out, you'll notice that Paulushof is written on the roof. Well, it was written on the roof there back in 1944. In fact, that was one of the markers that all the pilots and their paratroopers could look out and see, and they knew they were in the right place, and they knew that the Paulushof was on the south side of the drop zone, and that way it was going to be Son. And because it was so readily identifiable, it became a place where after the war the veterans could come back to because they could recognize it. And Carla, if you'd like to, by the way, this is Carla, if you haven't.
Hello, Carla.
Hi.
She runs the show here, and she has been welcoming our guests for many years. And her family directly involved with what happened here, and over the subsequent years when veterans would come and visit.
Your story is good today. I think it's a very interesting book.
For once.
Yeah. That's fine.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, you said that one of the last airplanes who held the parachute jumpers, it crashed in the sky, and there was a big explosion, and then these were the last parachute jumpers from that day, on the 17th. And it was only 4 years ago that Armando came back, and he was in the plane. And we never knew the story exactly. But my father, for like 50, 60 years, he found when he was, this was my father's field. You can see, yeah? And he was always working in the field, and then you see that metal, because of water, travels a little bit in the ground, so there's always movement. And then he found for many years pieces from the airplane. You could tell, you could see it was burned. So we have a lot of these pieces in the museum. And so he came back, it's only 4 years ago. He was 96, and my father was 5 that time. And then they walked as brothers, like arm in arm. It was very cute. They walked into the field and they looked, and they looked at each other like, we were there. You know, it's a long time ago. It's 8 years ago almost. So it was they had a bond without understanding each other. And I think at that time the same happened. And then he told us that he said, I was afraid because I thought, okay, this is my last moment because my parachute was burning, and it was a big drop, but nothing actually really happened. But he said, I couldn't run. I couldn't stand up. My mom said, come on, get the equipment and go. With my legs, they told me something with the nervous system. He said 2 of my kameraden took me under the arms, and I was just hanging there. My legs were hanging. I thought I'll never walk again. And then all of a sudden it came back, and I just started running, and then I was here at the Paulushoef. So it was, and then we said, okay, this is maybe so we could finish the stories. Like so it was very special. And he was the last American veteran that came here. We thought there will be more with the 80th anniversary, but no one came.
All gone.
About when, what year did veterans first start coming back? The 60s or 70s?
I think it was 15 years. Some of them came after 15 years, but that were also like officers, and they told my grandmother, you made the best chicken ever. And she was doing the washing for 3 weeks that time, and they remembered each other. But then actually only after 20, 25 years, more and more came. And then every 5 years we had a very big party in the front of the farm, and it was organized by the Airborne Club. So we didn't do anything. They just came and said, okay, let's have a party, and it was very good because they had the tent and all beautiful things from the army, and they made a great party. And then we were like very small children, and we got chewing gum and chocolates, and it's also great. And we had all the snackless things, so we have good memories.
And so Paulushoef became a place over the years, a place of healing, where they could come back. Remember how I talked about veterans would go back to Aldborn because it was a place that they had a positive memory from the war. Well, the Paulushoef for many veterans represented that as well, to come back here and to see it as a working farm and it being peaceful, and the people who were here were happy. It was a happy place that many of the veterans could come over the years. And so you would have the time here on the 17th, and then like tomorrow, Liberation Day in Eindhoven. So a lot for the veterans to have going on.
He said it was 81 years ago today, but they dropped
81 years ago today, in about 2 hours.
In about 2 hours.
Yep. So another thing that Carla and I have talked about was when all the gliders came in, beginning on the 17th, and some landed nicely and others crashed like gliders normally do. They created an airfield here. And first to bring in airplanes and to be able to bring in supplies and everything. And how long was the airfield working? It was only a few weeks.
Yeah, I think it was like only for 3 weeks. Yeah. Then so they stayed here in the house. The officers stayed in the house, and they had I don't know how you call it in English, but a campement, like with a lot of tents.
Mhm.
And when, so there was a club who organized all the equipment, and everything was so good, also well organized. And the farmers here were like really poor. There was no equipment at all. So after the war, we are still using equipment from 80 years ago. I can show you what we use. And that time was also like, how can these people be like so well organized? Something like that didn't really exist because there was no television and the people were very poor here. It was like there were aliens coming, falling from the sky and organizing here. So it was very special. We have a very beautiful picture. That's two farmer boys. They look at a glider, and there is a machine gun, something like coming out, and they're like, so the picture is very big. It's in the museum. You can see it just now. Yeah.
One of the big operations during this period, so we were bringing in all these gliders, and we had destroyed so many gliders in Normandy that for Market Garden they were really scrambling to get enough gliders. Also, there was a shortage of glider pilots. So a typical glider, a Waco glider, which was the normal glider that most Americans were using, would have two pilots, a pilot and a co-pilot. Well, because we had lost so many glider pilots in Normandy and they hadn't been able to train enough in that short period, all the gliders that came in here had one pilot. And then it would be some poor airborne bastard who wound up sitting up in the front and got to see the full horror of what it was like to be in a glider. Now, we knew that our assumption was we're going to continue on, and that we were going to continue on into Germany, and that airborne troops would be part of that. And so we needed to recover as many gliders as possible. So from the gliders that survived the landing and those that crashed, there were crews here doing everything they could to put these gliders back together, salvage them, and fly them out. And those that weren't salvaged, eventually they just got pushed off into the woods. And about 20 years ago, I remember being out in the woods on the left side, and you could still see some remnants of foxholes, and you could still find pieces of the canvas material that was around the gliders. So what Carla talks about, our logistics, by this time in 1944, we were getting pretty good at this. So not only bringing in the supplies that we needed to keep this operation going, but also to salvage as much as we could. And that was another thing the Allies were, and particularly the Americans, were much better at than the Germans. Our equipment tended to be simpler. It may not have been as, the guns may not have been as big, they may not have been as well engineered as the German stuff, but when our stuff broke down, we had an army full of kids who came off the farm who were used to working on the tractor or working on hot rods, so they could turn that equipment around. We had that mentality of, okay, let's fix it and get it back out. And that was a big piece of what allowed us to keep having, even when something was destroyed or damaged, we could turn it around and get it back working again. So, still can't believe 81 years. So as we're saying, so many veterans would come back here, even the ones who, maybe didn't come off the drop zone right here at the Paulushof, but because they had been told about it, because they saw it when they landed, it became this gathering place over the years. About 20 years ago, we came with Buck Compton and Don Malarkey, and I remember the plaque that's on the side of the house had just been put in, and they both had fond memories of an easy jump. Things got a little difficult after that, but at least the jump was nice. And within the first hour or two, you had all 3 battalions of the 506 were organized and ready to go. Which, compared to the experience in Normandy and even the experience of the 82nd Airborne in the Mediterranean, everybody was just stunned. We have 98% of our people, we have minimal casualties, pretty much all our equipment is here. So it started off really well, but as we'll see later, things kind of didn't go as well. So if you'd like to take a minute, just take in the drop zone, and then Carla's actually going to walk us back by the garden where you'll see some original items from 81 years ago that are still being used here on the farm.